My mother looked at my 80-year-old grandmother shivering in her wheelchair and pointed a manicured finger toward the front door. "Get out," she hissed, her voice cold as the Chicago blizzard raging outside. "We need the guest room for people who actually matter." On Christmas Eve, my own mother threw us out into 20-degree below-zero weather with nothing but a $100 bill and a suitcase. She thought she was discarding a burden. She had no idea she was evicting the secret owner of the very mansion she was standing in. My grandmother was not just a helpless old woman. She was a silent billionaire with a net worth of $3.2 billion, and tonight, she was about to teach my family a brutal lesson in power. I am Sophia, 32 years old, and for the last decade I have been the invisible servant in my own family. While my mother, Bernice, chased social status, and my brother, Marcus, pretended to be a mogul, I was the one changing diapers, paying bills, and caring for Nana Rose. But nothing prepared me for the cruelty of last night. Before I tell you how we destroyed their ego and took back our empire, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you. The nightmare began at 6 p.m. The dining room of our family home in the wealthy suburbs of Chicago was suffocating. The air smelled of expensive roast beef and the overwhelming perfume my sister-in-law, Courtney, always wore. I adjusted Nana Rose sitting in her wheelchair at the corner of the table. Her hands were shaking slightly from Parkinson's, but her eyes were sharp, watching everything. Courtney sighed loudly, dropping her fork onto her plate with a clatter that silenced the room. She ran a hand through her blonde hair and looked at my mother with a pained expression. "Bernice, do we really have to have the wheelchair right up against the table? I just heard a screech. I think the metal is scratching the imported oak floor. You know my parents are coming later, and they notice these things." My mother, Bernice, froze. To her, the approval of Courtney's parents, the wealthy Vanderbilts, was more important than oxygen. She leaned over the table to inspect the floor, ignoring the fact that Nana Rose was sitting right there. "Oh my God, you are right, Courtney," my mother gasped. "Sophia, I told you to put felt pads on those wheels. This floor cost me $15,000 to refinish last month." I gripped the handle of the wheelchair, my knuckles turning white. "Mom, the wheels are rubber. They cannot scratch wood. And Nana needs to be close to the table so I can help her eat." Courtney wrinkled her nose, waving her hand in front of her face as if she smelled something rotting. "It is not just the floor, Bernice. I did not want to say anything, but there is a distinct smell, like old medicine and mothballs. It is really making it hard to enjoy this prime rib." The room went silent. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at my brother, Marcus, expecting him to defend his grandmother, the woman who had paid for his first car. Instead, Marcus chuckled, adjusting the gold watch on his wrist. It was a Rolex he claimed to have bought with his bonus, but I knew for a fact he was 3 months behind on the lease payments for his BMW. "Come on, Sophia," Marcus said, smirking at me. "You cannot expect Courtney to eat with that hospital smell in her face. Why are you even sitting at the main table? You were basically the help. Just take Grandma to the kitchen and feed her there. You guys are ruining the vibe." My mother nodded in agreement, her face hard. "Marcus is right. Sophia, wheel her into the kitchen. You can eat when we are done. We need to set the mood before the Vanderbilts arrive. We cannot have the room looking like a nursing home." I looked at Nana Rose. She had not said a word. She just sat there, her small frame wrapped in a worn-out gray cardigan that Bernice hated. But under the table, I felt her hand squeeze my wrist. It was a strong, firm grip, a signal. "Do not argue." her eyes seemed to say. Not yet. I stood up, fighting the tears stinging my eyes. Fine, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. Come on, Nana. Let us go where we are not a burden. As I turned the wheelchair, I heard Courtney whisper loudly to Marcus. Finally, I thought she would never leave. God, how does your sister live like that? 32 years old and her only job is wiping an old woman's mouth. It is pathetic. Marcus laughed, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. She has zero ambition, babe. That is why she is the scapegoat, and I am the golden child. Some people are born to lead, and some are born to serve. Look at this bezel, by the way. The diamonds hit different under the chandelier, right? I pushed the wheelchair into the kitchen, the swinging door cutting off their laughter. The kitchen was cold, the staff having been sent home early for the holidays. I prepared a plate of mashed potatoes for Nana, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the spoon. I am sorry, Nana, I whispered, kneeling beside her. I am so sorry they treat you like this. Nana Rose looked at me, her expression unreadable. She took a slow bite of potatoes, then looked toward the dining room door. Her voice was raspy but steady. Do not apologize for wolves acting like wolves, Sophia. Just remember who fed them when they were puppies. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was a long, melodious chime that signaled guests at the front gate. From the kitchen, I heard the chaos erupt in the dining room. She turned and ran to answer the front door, putting on her best fake smile. Hello, welcome. So glad you could make it. The heavy oak door slammed shut behind us, the sound echoing like a gunshot that signaled the end of my life as I knew it. The warmth of the hallway was instantly replaced by the biting, aggressive chill of a Chicago blizzard. I stood on the porch, staring at the closed door, unable to comprehend that the people who shared my blood had just locked us out to die. My mother, Bernice, did not just ask us to leave. She erased us. Just moments before, she had marched into the room where I was frantically packing Nana's medicine. She did not help. Instead, she grabbed my suitcase, the zipper barely closed, and hurled it out onto the snow-covered driveway. The bag landed with a dull thud, burying itself in a drift of white powder. Here, she had said, thrusting a crumpled piece of green paper into my chest. It was a single $100 bill. I looked at it, then at her. The look in her eyes was not anger, it was annoyance. The kind of look you give a stray dog that keeps scratching at your fence. Take this and go to that motel on the interstate, the Motel 6. It is cheap and they take cash. Just make sure you are gone before the Vanderbilts come downstairs for cocktails. I need this night to be perfect, Sophia. Do not ruin my investment. I had grabbed her arm, my fingers digging into the velvet of her expensive dress. Mom, please, I begged, my voice cracking. It is 15 degrees below zero out here. The wind chill is deadly. Nana is 78 years old. She has a heart condition. You cannot put her in a motel. Please, just let us stay in the basement. We will be quiet. We will not come out. Bernice pulled her arm away as if my touch was contagious. She dusted off her sleeve, inspecting the fabric for wrinkles. The basement is full of Marcus's old gym equipment, she said dismissively. There is no room. Besides, Courtney says the sound of the wheelchair rolling on the floorboards upstairs echoes down there. It would disturb the peace. That was when Courtney appeared in the doorway, a glass of champagne already in her hand. She leaned against the door frame, wrapped in a cashmere shawl that probably cost more than my car. She looked at Nana Rose, who was sitting silently in her chair on the porch, snowflakes beginning to settle on her gray hair. "Honestly, Sophia, you are being so dramatic," Courtney drawled, taking a sip of her drink. "If you are that worried about the cold, just put her in the garage. It is detached, so we would not hear anything, and the heat from the car's engines usually keeps it above freezing. It is better than the street, right?" I stared at her, a wave of pure, white-hot rage rising in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap the champagne flute out of her hand and watch the glass shatter on the frozen concrete. I wanted to ask her how she could sleep at night knowing she was suggesting a human being, an elderly woman, should sleep next to exhaust pipes and oil stains. But I did nothing. I could not do anything. I had no power, no money, and no leverage. If I caused a scene, they would call the police, and Bernice would spin a story about how I was violent and unstable. I had to protect Nana. So I swallowed my pride. It tasted like ash in my throat. I turned away from them, grabbing the handles of the wheelchair. "Fine," I whispered, my voice lost in the wind. "We are leaving." "Good," Bernice said, already turning back to the warmth of the house. "Do not come back until I call you. And Sophia, try to look presentable if anyone sees you leaving. We have a reputation in this neighborhood." Then the door clicked shut, and the lock turned with a decisive snap. The walk down the driveway was a nightmare. The wheels of the wheelchair cut through the thin layer of ice, getting stuck in the cracks. I had to push with all my weight, my boots slipping on the slick pavement. The wind was relentless. It tore through my thin coat, stinging my face like 1,000 needles. Nana sat huddled under the 2 thin blankets I had managed to grab. She was so small, so fragile. Every time the chair hit a bump, I saw her wince, though she never made a sound. I checked my phone. My fingers were already numb, making it hard to type. I opened the Uber app, praying for a miracle. The surge pricing was astronomical, $80 for a 3-mile ride. If I took it, we would have $20 left for a room. That was impossible. I checked the bus schedule. The next bus to the interstate was not coming for 40 minutes. "We have to walk to the main road, Nana," I said, leaning down so she could hear me over the howling wind. "There is a gas station there. We can call a cab from inside." She did not answer. She just nodded, her chin buried in her scarf. We trudged forward. The neighborhood was a cruel display of wealth. Every house we passed was decorated with thousands of twinkling lights. Through the large bay windows, I could see families gathering around fireplaces, opening gifts, drinking cocoa. It felt like watching a movie of a life I was never meant to have. We were the ghosts haunting their paradise. My feet were wet and freezing. The snow had soaked through my boots within minutes. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached the main road. The neon sign of the Motel 6 buzzed in the distance, a beacon of hopelessness. I pushed Nana into the small lobby. It smelled of stale cigarette smoke and bleach, but it was warm. I left Nana by the vending machine and ran to the front desk, slapping the wet $100 bill on the counter. "1 room, please," I gasped, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. 2 beds, ground floor." The clerk, a bored teenager with headphones around his neck, did not even look up from his phone. "Fully booked, lady. It is Christmas Eve, please," I begged, panic rising in my throat. "Just check again. Someone must have canceled. My grandmother is sick. We have nowhere else to go." He turned the monitor toward me. 0 vacancy. Look, try the shelter downtown, or maybe the Super 8, 3 exits down. But you cannot stay in the lobby. Policy. I stood there, paralyzed. 3 exits down was 5 miles away. We had no car, no bus, and the temperature was dropping. We were kicked out of the motel lobby 5 minutes later. I found a bus stop shelter a block away. It was a 3-sided glass box with a metal bench. It offered no heat, only a slight break from the wind. I wheeled Nana inside and sat on the bench, pulling her close to me. I wrapped my arms around her, trying to share whatever body heat I had left. This is it, I thought, tears freezing on my cheeks. This is how it ends.
We are going to freeze to death on the side of the road while my mother eats prime rib and laughs with the Vanderbilts. I have failed. I promised Grandpa I would take care of her, and I have failed. I looked at Nana. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was shallow. "Nana?" I whispered, shaking her shoulder gently. "Nana, stay with me. Do not go to sleep. Please." For a terrifying moment, she did not respond. I felt a scream building in my chest, a primal cry of grief and terror. But then, her head lifted. The movement was not weak or shaky. It was deliberate. She opened her eyes, and in the dim light of the street lamp, I saw something that made me freeze. The fear was gone. The confusion, the frailty, the look of a helpless old woman suffering from dementia, it had all vanished. Her eyes were clear, sharp, and burning with a cold, hard intelligence I had not seen in years. It was the look of a woman who had built skyscrapers from nothing. She sat up straight, pushing the blanket off her shoulders as if the cold did not touch her. She looked at the motel sign across the street, then turned to me. Her voice was no longer the raspy whisper of an invalid. It was the steel voice of a CEO. "That is enough," she said firmly. I blinked, wiping the snow from my eyelashes. "Nana? What are you doing? You need to keep the blanket on." She ignored me. Her hand reached into the hidden pocket of her tattered sweater. She pulled out a black phone. It was sleek, heavy, and encased in gold. It looked like something from a spy movie. I stared at it. "Nana, where did you get that?" She pressed a button on the side of the phone. The screen lit up, illuminating her face. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I realized I did not truly know the woman sitting in front of me. "I am done playing the victim, Sophia," she said, her fingers moving rapidly over the keypad. Bernice wanted to see what life is like without her mother's protection? Fine. I will show her. But first, we need a ride. She lifted the phone to her ear. "Hello, Michael," she said, her voice commanding and calm. "This is Rosewood. Bring the car. And tell the pilot to prep the helicopter. We are going to the tower." I stared at the object in my grandmother's hand, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. It was not just a phone. It was a Virtu signature, the kind handcrafted in England with ruby bearings and a sapphire crystal screen. It gleamed under the flickering street lamp, a beacon of obscene wealth amidst our absolute poverty. The gold casing seemed to burn against the backdrop of the dirty snow and the graffiti-covered glass of the bus shelter. For a moment, I thought the hypothermia was setting in. I thought I was hallucinating. This was the woman who clipped coupons for canned soup. This was the woman who wore the same gray cardigan for 6 years because she said she could not afford a new one. "Nana," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the howling wind. "Is that real?
Where did you get that? She did not answer me. She did not even look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, cold and calculating. She pressed a single button on the side of the device. There was no dialing tone. It connected instantly. "This is Rosewood," she said. Her voice was unrecognizable. The tremor was gone. The raspiness that usually plagued her in the winter was replaced by a tone of absolute command. It was a voice that expected obedience. "Activate code RW1970. Location is the intersection of State and 47th. You have 15 minutes. She hung up and slipped the phone back into the inner pocket of her coat. Then she folded her hands in her lap and waited, staring straight ahead into the blizzard. "Nana, who did you call?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "What is going on? We need to call a cab or the police or someone who can actually help us. We cannot just sit here." She turned to me slowly. The look in her eyes stopped the words in my throat. It was a look of fierce, protective love, but it was also terrifying. "We are not calling the police, Sophia. We are calling the cleaners." "Cleaners? Like hitmen?" My mind raced to the worst possible conclusions. Had my grandmother been involved in something illegal back in the day? Is that why we never had money? Were we about to be picked up by criminals? We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. The cold was seeping into my bones, making my teeth chatter so hard I thought they might crack. Every minute felt like an hour. I checked my watch. 10 minutes had passed. Then 12. At the 14-minute mark, the ground began to vibrate. It started as a low hum, something I felt in the soles of my wet boots before I heard it. Then came the sound. It was not the rattle of a city bus or the siren of a police car. It was the deep, rhythmic thumping of rotors cutting through the heavy winter air. I looked up. Through the swirling snow, I saw lights. Bright, blinding spotlights cutting through the darkness from above. "Oh my God," I gasped, shielding my eyes. "What is that?" Simultaneously, a pair of headlights swept across the street, illuminating the swirling snowflakes like diamonds. A car turned the corner, moving with a speed and precision that defied the icy road conditions. It was a Maybach, pitch black, long, and imposing. It did not just drive, it prowled. The car screeched to a halt right in front of the bus shelter, blocking the wind. The doors flew open before the wheels had even fully stopped. 4 men stepped out. They were giants, dressed not in police uniforms, but in tailored black suits with long wool coats. They wore earpieces and moved with coordinated efficiency. I instinctively threw myself in front of Nana, spreading my arms. "Stay back!" I screamed, though my voice was weak. "Leave us alone!" The lead man, a towering figure with a scar running through his eyebrow, ignored me completely. He walked past me as if I were a ghost and knelt on one knee in the snow directly in front of my grandmother's wheelchair. He bowed his head, disregarding the slush soaking into his expensive trousers. "Chairman Rosewood," he said, his voice deep and respectful. "The tower is prepped. The medical team is on standby. We apologize for the delay. The weather conditions required the heavy lift helicopter." Nana looked down at him and nodded once. "Get me out of this cold, Michael." "Yes, ma'am." Michael stood up and finally looked at me. His expression softened slightly, but he remained professional. "Miss Sophia, please allow us." He gestured to the other men. Two of them moved toward the wheelchair, lifting it effortlessly, Nana and all, as if it weighed nothing.
They carried her toward the open door of the Maybach. I stood there, my mouth hanging open, my hands trembling. The bag of clothes I had packed dropped from my frozen fingers into the snow. This was Michael? The man she had called? This wasn't a family friend. This was private security, high-level private security.
Miss Sophia, Michael said gently, picking up my bag. The helicopter is landing in the vacant lot behind the gas station. The car will take us there. It is safer than the roads tonight. I stumbled after them, sliding into the back seat of the Maybach next to Nana. The interior smelled of rich leather and warm mahogany. The heat was on, blasting a comforting warmth that made my skin tingle. Nana, I breathed, looking at her as the car accelerated toward the lot where a sleek black helicopter was touching down, its rotors kicking up a storm of white powder. Who are you? She patted my hand, her fingers finally warm. I am the woman who built this city, Sophia.
And I am the woman who is going to burn your mother's ego to the ground.
We transferred to the helicopter in seconds. The noise was deafening, but inside the cabin, it was silent. I put on the noise-canceling headset Michael handed me. As we lifted off, my stomach dropped. We rose above the streetlights, above the bus stop, above the Motel 6 that had turned us away. The city of Chicago spread out below us, a grid of golden lights struggling against the white storm. Michael's voice came through the headset. Chairman, pilot is asking for the flight path. Direct to the Rosewood Tower? Nana pressed the intercom button. No, take the scenic route. Fly over Highland Park. Specifically over 342 Oakwood Drive. I froze. That was our address. That was Bernice's house. The helicopter banked left, cutting through the night. Within minutes, we were hovering over the exclusive suburb we had just been exiled from. Look down, Sophia, Nana commanded. I looked out the window. From this height, the mansion looked like a dollhouse. I could see the glow of the chandeliers from the dining room windows. I could see the driveway where Bernice had thrown my suitcase. I could imagine them inside, eating prime rib, laughing, thinking they had successfully disposed of their trash. They looked so small, so insignificant. Nana leaned toward the window, her reflection ghosting against the glass. She stared down at the house she had paid for, the house she secretly owned, the house filled with the people who had betrayed her. Enjoy your dinner, Bernice, she whispered into the microphone, her voice cold as ice. Enjoy your last Christmas as a rich woman, because when the sun rises tomorrow, I am taking back everything. She turned to the pilot. Take us home, to the penthouse. As the helicopter turned away, leaving the suburbs behind in the darkness, I looked at my grandmother and realized the gentle old woman I knew was gone. In her place sat a titan of industry, and she was ready for war. The helicopter touched down on the private helipad of the Rosewood Tower with a gentle thud that barely shook the cabin. The blades slowed to a rhythmic whoosh, and Michael was there instantly, sliding the door open. The wind at this altitude was fierce, but it felt different from the biting cold on the street. This was the wind of the summit, the air breathed by gods and kings. I stepped out, my legs still trembling, and helped Nana Rose into a sleek, motorized wheelchair that seemed to be waiting for her on the tarmac. It was nothing like the rusted, squeaky chair Bernice had complained about. This machine moved silently, responding to the slightest touch of Nana's hand. We took a private elevator that had only one button, the 88th floor. As the numbers climbed, my ears popped, and the reality of my situation began to settle in. I was rising away from the world where I was a servant, a scapegoat, a burden. When the heavy steel doors slid open, I gasped. The penthouse was not just a home. It was a palace in the sky. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls offered a 360-degree view of Chicago. The city lay spread out below us like a carpet of diamonds, the very streets where we had been freezing an hour ago, now looking like distant veins of light. The floor was white marble, heated from beneath. The walls were hung with original art that I recognized from my art history electives in college. Basquiat, Bearden, Lawrence. These were not prints. They were masterpieces worth millions. And the smell. It was the scent of teakwood, leather, and absolute, terrified silence. "Welcome home, Sophia," Nana said, her voice echoing in the vast space. She guided her chair to a massive mahogany desk that sat in the center of the living area like a throne. She gestured for me to sit in the leather chair opposite her. "Nana," I stammered, looking around wildly, "I do not understand. If you have all this, why did we live in the basement? Why did you let Bernice treat you like garbage? Why did you eat canned soup?" Nana's face hardened. She pressed a button on the desk, and a holographic screen rose from the surface. It displayed a map of Chicago, covered in hundreds of glowing red dots. "Because, Sophia, wealth in this country has always been a dangerous thing for people like us, especially back then." She pointed to a black and white photograph on the desk. It showed a handsome black man in a sharp 1950s suit standing next to a young Nana in front of a brick building. "Your grandfather, William Rosewood, was not a janitor as I told your mother. He was a genius. He bought his first apartment building in 1955. By 1960, he owned 3 city blocks on the south side. We were building an empire. But we were too loud about it. We drove nice cars. We wore nice clothes. And people noticed." Her voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with a pain that 50 years had not erased. "They came for him on a Tuesday. Men who smiled in the daylight and wore masks at night. They did not just kill him, Sophia. They made an example of him. They wanted to show that a black man had no business owning the city. They burned our house. They threatened to kill me and baby Bernice if I did not sign over the deeds." I covered my mouth, tears welling in my eyes. I had never heard this story. Bernice always said Grandpa died of a heart attack. "I went underground," Nana continued, her eyes steel. "I legally changed my name. I created shell companies. I hired white lawyers to be the face of my business while I pulled the strings from the shadows. I played the part of the poor, struggling widow. I raised Bernice to be fearful, to be safe, but I never stopped buying. When the white folks fled the city for the suburbs in the 70s, I bought their buildings for pennies. When the market crashed in 2008, I bought the skyscrapers." She tapped the screen, and the red dots pulsed. "I own 209 commercial and residential buildings in the greater Chicago area. This tower, the mall where Courtney shops, the office building where Marcus pretends to work. I own them all. My net worth is $3.2 billion. My head was spinning. $3.2 billion. The number was abstract, impossible. And yet, here we were. "I did it to protect Bernice," Nana said, her voice dripping with bitterness. "I thought if she grew up humble, she would be kind. I thought if I hid the money, she would value family over things. But I was wrong. The poison was not in the money, Sophia. It was in her soul. Tonight proved that. She chose a chandelier over her mother. She chose a guest room over her daughter. Nana swiped her hand across the screen, bringing up a specific document. It was a property deed. I squinted at the address. 342 Oakwood Drive. Wait, I said, leaning forward. That is Bernice's address. That is the house we just left. Nana smiled, a cold, predatory smile that sent shivers down my spine. Your mother likes to brag that she married well. She likes to tell people she owns that house free and clear. But she does not. She lives there because I allow it. The deed is held by a trust called R.W. Holdings. Bernice thinks that is just the bank. She does not know R.W. stands for Rosewood. She does not know she has been paying rent to me for 30 years. Nana looked deep into my eyes. She reached into the drawer and pulled out a thick leather binder. She slid it across the desk toward me. I am 78 years old, Sophia. I am tired of hiding. I am tired of playing the helpless old woman while my ungrateful daughter and her parasitic husband feast on my labor. Tonight, the Rosewood name comes back from the dead. But I cannot do it alone. I need a face. I need a CEO. I looked at the binder. Embossed on the cover in gold letters was my name, Sophia Rosewood, President of Operations. Me? I whispered. But Nana, I am just an executive assistant. I fetch coffee. I organize calendars. I did not know how to run an empire. You ran that house, Nana countered firmly. You managed the bills with pennies. You navigated Bernice's narcissism. You have the patience of a saint and the work ethic of a survivor. Those are the only skills that cannot be taught. I will teach you the rest. I will teach you how to crush them. She wheeled herself closer, grabbing my hand. Her grip was iron. Listen to me closely, Sophia. The money is powerful, but it is a blunt instrument. If we just cut them off, they will play the victim. They will sue. They will cry to the press. We need to do this surgically. She opened the binder to the first page. It was a dossier on Marcus's failing business ventures and Bernice's credit card debt. We are not going to use money to destroy them, Nana said, her eyes burning with a terrifying intelligence. We are going to use the law. And more importantly, we are going to use their own ignorance against them. They think they are smart. They think they are untouchable. We are going to let them believe that. We are going to feed their greed until they choke on it. She pointed to the deed of the house on the screen. Bernice thinks this house is her asset? She is about to find out. It is her prison. And Marcus? He wants to be a big-shot developer? Fine. We will give him a rope long enough to hang himself. Nana leaned back, the city lights reflecting in her glasses. Dry your eyes, Sophia. The girl who cried in the snow is dead. You are a rosewood now. And rosewoods do not get mad. We get even. Tomorrow morning, you are going to walk into the best salon in the city. You are going to buy the most expensive suit on Michigan Avenue. And then you are going to execute Order 66 on your own family. Are you ready? I looked at the woman who had raised me, really looked at her for the first time. I looked at the empire beneath our feet. I thought about Courtney's laugh as she suggested I sleep in the garage. I thought about the $100 bill Bernice had thrown at me. I placed my hand on the binder. I felt the cold leather under my fingertips. It felt like a weapon. I am ready, Nana, I said, my voice steady for the first time that night. Let us burn it down. The sun had not yet risen over Lake Michigan when my new life began. There was no time for sleep. There was no time to process the trauma of being evicted or the shock of learning I was the heiress to a multi-billion-dollar empire. Nana Rose did not believe in coddling. She believed in preparation. The penthouse became a war room. The dining table, made of black marble, was covered in stacks of documents that smelled of fresh ink and old money. This was not a makeover montage from a romantic comedy. There were no cucumbers on my eyes or champagne toasts. This was boot camp for billionaires, and Nana was the drill sergeant. She sat at the head of the table, her wheelchair replaced by a high-backed leather executive chair. She threw a thick binder in front of me. "Read it," she commanded. "You have 2 hours to memorize the balance sheets of RW Capital. I want you to tell me our debt-to-equity ratio, our liquid assets, and exactly how much leverage we have over the Vanderbilt family businesses." I opened the binder. The numbers swam before my eyes. For the last 10 years, my reading material had been grocery lists and Bernice's erratic text messages demanding dry cleaning. Now, I was looking at the financial anatomy of Chicago. I forced my brain to focus. I drank black coffee that tasted like tar and read until my eyes burned. When I hesitated on a figure, Nana slammed her hand on the table. "Do not guess, Sophia. Do not say you think. In this room, and in every boardroom you walk into from now on, you either know or you remain silent. Uncertainty is blood in the water for sharks like Courtney's father. Do you understand?" I nodded. "I understand." She shook her head. "No. Speak up. Project your voice. Stop apologizing for taking up space. You are a Rosewood. You own the building. Act like it." By noon, my head was pounding, but something had shifted. The fog of inferiority that Bernice had planted in my mind was lifting. I began to see the patterns in the numbers. I saw how Nana had moved money through shell companies to keep Bernice afloat without her knowing. I saw the loans Marcus had taken out, backed by nothing but his arrogance. I saw the weakness in the Vanderbilt empire, which was overextended and fragile. I was not just learning math. I was learning how to hold a weapon. Then came the image team. Nana did not hire a stylist. She hired an architect of identity. A woman named Alara walked in, flanked by assistants carrying garment bags. Alara did not smile. She looked at me, circling me like I was a piece of clay that needed to be reshaped. "She looks soft," Alara said, touching my hair. It was pulled back in the messy bun I always wore, because Bernice said loose hair was unprofessional for a servant. "She is not soft," Nana replied from her desk. "She has been hiding. Cut it off." I sat in the chair as the scissors clicked. I watched my long, damaged hair fall to the floor. With every lock that fell, I felt lighter. I was shedding the woman who scrubbed floors. I was shedding the woman who took the bus to save $2. Alara gave me a sharp, angular bob that framed my face like a helmet. It was severe. It was intimidating. It was perfect. Next came the clothes. There were no floral prints, no pastels, no soft fabrics. Alara dressed me in a black Tom Ford suit with a tailored blazer that sharpened my shoulders. The fabric was heavy, expensive wool that absorbed the light. Underneath, a crisp white silk shirt buttoned to the collar. I stepped into a pair of Louboutin heels, the red soles flashing like a warning signal. Finally, Alara handed me a pair of oversized black sunglasses. "Put them on," she said. "The eyes give everything away. Until you learn to mask your emotions completely, hide them." I walked to the floor-to-ceiling mirror. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. She stood tall. Her chin was lifted. She looked expensive. She looked dangerous. The tired, apologetic Sophia was gone. In her place stood Miss S., the ruthless representative of R.W. Capital. Nana wheeled herself over to me. She looked at my reflection and nodded slowly. "Good," she said softly. "You look like you could fire your own mother without blinking. And that is exactly what you might have to do." She handed me a leather briefcase. "Inside is the foreclosure notice for the house on Oakwood Drive, but we are not sending it yet. First, we let them dig their grave a little deeper. We have a meeting with Marcus in 2 days regarding his loan application. You will be the one conducting it." I took the briefcase. My hands did not shake. I felt a cold calm settle over me. I was ready. Suddenly, a jarring, tinny sound broke the silence of the penthouse. It was a ringtone. Not the sophisticated chime of Nana's Virtue, but the default annoying marimba of a cheap Android phone. It was coming from the pocket of my discarded winter coat, which lay in a heap by the door. I walked over and fished out my old phone. The screen was cracked spiderweb style from when Marcus had knocked it off the table last month. The caller ID flashed a name that used to make my stomach clench in fear. Mom. I looked at Nana. She gestured for me to answer. "Put it on speaker," she whispered. "Let us hear what the peasant has to say to the queen." I slid my thumb across the broken glass screen and answered. "Sophia?" Bernice's voice screeched through the speaker, loud and frantic. "Where the hell are you? I have been looking for your grandmother's heart medication for 20 minutes. Did you pack it in that stupid bag of yours?" I held the phone away from my ear, staring at it with a mixture of amusement and disgust. She wasn't calling to see if we had frozen to death. She wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling because she needed something. "Well, answer me!" Bernice yelled. "Courtney's parents are trying to nap, and I am turning this house upside down. If she dies because you stole her pills, I am calling the police on you. You ungrateful little brat. Bring them back right now." I stood there in my $3,000 suit, looking out over the city I would one day inherit. I looked at the woman who thought she held power over me, realizing she was nothing more than a tenant living on borrowed time. I lowered my sunglasses, looking at the phone with cold detachment. "I did not steal anything, Bernice," I said, my voice dropping an octave, imitating the cadence Nana used. "And I suggest you look in the trash can. That is where Courtney threw them when she knocked the bottle over." There was a silence on the other end. She was shocked that I had spoken back, shocked that I called her by her first name. "Excuse me?" Bernice sputtered. "How dare you speak to me like that? You bring your ass back here right now and fix this mess, or so help me God!" I pressed the red button, ending the call mid-sentence. I looked at Nana Rose. She was smiling. "Block the number," Nana said. "Ms. S. does not take calls from tenants. Now, let us get back to work. We have an empire to run." While I was sitting in a high-rise office learning how to leverage debt and acquire assets, my family was doing the only thing they knew how to do, which was spending money that did not belong to them. Ignorant of the fact that their financial lifeline had been severed the moment Nana Rose boarded that helicopter, Bernice, Marcus, and Courtney decided to numb the stress of the previous night with a shopping spree on the Magnificent Mile. They walked into the Hermes flagship store with the confidence of royalty, unaware that they were merely peasants wearing borrowed crowns. For years, my mother had relied on a specific Black American Express Centurion card. She told everyone, including herself, that the unlimited credit line was a result of my late father's wise investments and a generous pension fund he had set up before he died. It was the lie she used to justify her laziness and her arrogance. The truth, which I had just discovered in the Rosewood ledgers, was that the card was a supplementary account linked directly to one of Nana's private holding companies. Nana had paid the bill in full every month for 30 years, a silent charity to keep her daughter from destitution. But charity had an expiration date, and that date was yesterday. I watched the security footage later, a perk of owning the building the boutique rented space from. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Bernice was parading around the scarf section, draping orange silk over her shoulders. Courtney was eyeing a $25,000 Birkin bag, her eyes gleaming with greed. Marcus was trying on a pair of leather driving gloves, posing in the mirror and talking loudly on his phone about imaginary business deals to impress the sales associates. "I will take it all," Bernice announced, waving her hand dismissively at a pile of goods that totaled more than most people earn in a year. "And add the bag for my daughter-in-law. She has had a stressful 24 hours, dealing with some difficult household staff." They moved to the private checkout counter, sipping the sparkling water the staff had provided. The sales associate, a young woman who knew them by name because they spent so much, smiled and rang up the total. $42,000. Bernice did not even look at the screen. She slapped the heavy black titanium card onto the glass counter with a dull thud. It was a power move she had practiced 1,000 times. The associate swiped the card. A moment of silence followed. Then, a sharp, dissonant beep cut through the quiet luxury of the store. The associate frowned, looking at the screen. "I am sorry, Mrs. Vanderbilt. It says the transaction was not authorized." Bernice laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Do not be ridiculous. Run it again. It is probably just a chip error. That card has no limit." The associate swiped it again. Beep. Declined. Courtney stopped sipping her water. Marcus lowered his sunglasses. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from deferential to suspicious. "Try entering the numbers manually," Bernice snapped, her neck beginning to flush red. "Do you know how much money I spend in this store? This is embarrassing. Fix your machine." The associate looked uncomfortable. "One moment, please. I need to call the merchant services for an authorization code." She picked up the phone and whispered something. Bernice tapped her foot impatiently, muttering to Courtney about incompetent service workers. But I knew exactly what was happening on the other end of that line. The associate was speaking to the fraud department of American Express, who had received a direct flag from the account owner, Rosewood Holdings. The associate hung up the phone. Her face was pale. She did not look at Bernice. She signaled to a man standing near the back of the store. It was the store manager, a man named Pierre, who had kissed Bernice's hand when they walked in. Now, his face was stone. Pierre walked over to the counter. He did not smile. He reached out and picked up the black card. "Mrs. Vanderbilt," Pierre said, his voice loud enough for the other customers to hear. "I am afraid I have bad news. The issuer has flagged this card as stolen property." "Stolen?" Bernice shrieked, her voice cracking. "How dare you? That is my husband's card. Give it back to me immediately." "I cannot do that, madame," Pierre said calmly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of heavy silver scissors. "The instruction from the bank is a code 10. That means confiscate and destroy." "No!" Bernice lunged forward, but Marcus held her back. Right in front of their eyes, Pierre opened the scissors. With a satisfying crunch that must have sounded like a breaking bone to my mother, he cut the titanium card in half. Then he cut it again. The pieces fell onto the counter with a final metallic clatter. "You have to leave," Pierre said, pointing to the door. "And please do not return until you can pay for your items with valid legal tender. Security will escort you out." The walk of shame was brutal. They were escorted past the tourists, past the displays they could no longer afford, and out onto the cold, windy street. Bernice was hyperventilating. Marcus looked like he wanted to punch someone but was too cowardly to try. Courtney looked furious, not at the situation, but at the fact that she was leaving without her Birkin bag. "It is a mistake!" Bernice yelled as the door closed behind them. "It is just a bank error. I am going to sue them. I am going to sue American Express, and I am going to sue Hermes." She was trembling, clutching her chest. "They froze my assets. It must be an identity theft. Someone hacked my accounts. That is the only explanation. Marcus, call the bank. Tell them who we are." Marcus pulled out his phone, but he looked defeated. "Mom, I cannot call them. I do not have the account password. You never gave it to me because you said it was Dad's secret pension." Courtney looked at her husband and her mother-in-law with cold calculation. She realized the gravy train had just derailed. She did not care about Bernice's panic. She cared about her own survival. She needed a new host, a new source of money, and fast. She grabbed Marcus by the lapels of his coat, pulling him close. "Listen to me," she hissed. "Stop panicking. This is actually a good thing." "A good thing?" Marcus asked, bewildered. "We just got kicked out of Hermes. Mom is broke." "No," Courtney said, her eyes narrowing. "This is the universe telling you it is time to stop living off your mother and start building your own empire. You have been talking about that real estate development project for months. The luxury condos in the West Loop?" "Yeah, but I need capital," Marcus stammered. "I need $5 million to break ground. I was going to ask Mom to mortgage the house, but if her credit is frozen—" "Forget your mom," Courtney interrupted, glancing at Bernice, who was busy screaming at a taxi driver. "I have been doing some research. There is a new venture capital firm in the city. They are aggressive. They are looking for minority-owned businesses to support. They have deep pockets and they want to make a splash." Marcus perked up. "What is the name of the firm?" Courtney smiled, a smile that was sharp and dangerous. She pulled up a website on her phone. "It is called RW Capital," she said. "I heard they just opened their books for new investments this morning. You are going to go there, Marcus. You are going to pitch them your condo idea, and you are going to get that $5 million. We do not need your mother's credit card. We are going to be rich on our own terms." Marcus looked at the screen. He saw the sleek logo of RW Capital. He saw the promise of easy money. He had no idea that the RW stood for the very name he had spent his life mocking. "Let's do it," Marcus said, straightening his coat. "I will go there first thing tomorrow morning." Courtney patted his cheek. "That is my golden boy. Now, call an Uber. I refuse to take the bus like a poor person." Marcus spent the entire night before the meeting not studying market trends or analyzing construction costs, but gluing pictures of Ferraris and infinity pools onto a poster board. He called it his vision board. To Marcus, being a developer was 90% aesthetic and 10% someone else's money. He had named his imaginary project the Vanderbilt Heights, stealing his wife's family name to give his empty ideas a veneer of unearned prestige. He needed $5 million to break ground on a plot of land he did not own, to build condos he did not know how to engineer, for clients he did not have. But in his mind, the money was already his. He put on his best suit, a navy blue Italian cut that he had charged to the now-defunct Black Card, and practiced his winning smile in the mirror. He did not see a leech. He saw a titan of industry. He arrived at the headquarters of RW Capital at 10 in the morning. The building was a monolith of black glass and steel in the heart of the financial district, a structure that screamed power and intimidation. Marcus walked through the lobby, checking his reflection in every surface, oblivious to the fact that he was walking into the belly of the beast that was hunting him. He told the receptionist he was there to see the managing partner. He dropped names. He adjusted his cufflinks. He acted like he owned the place. He had no idea that the woman he was here to impress was the same woman he had ordered to take out the trash 2 days ago. The conference room was cavernous. It was designed to make anyone sitting on the guest side feel small. The table was a long slab of polished obsidian. At the far end, silhouetted against the blinding white light of the floor-to-ceiling window, sat a figure. "Please, sit down," the figure said. The voice was low, modulated, and stripped of any warmth. Marcus sat. He placed his vision board on the table and leaned back, flashing his teeth. "Thank you for seeing me. I know your time is money, and I am here to make us both a lot of it. I am Marcus Brooks, lead developer of the Vanderbilt Heights." He looked at the woman at the head of the table, or rather, he looked at her suit. He looked at the heavy gold watch on her wrist. He looked at the diamond stud earrings. He assessed her value, not her identity. "I am Ms. S," Sophia said, keeping her face partially turned toward the window. "My analysts tell me you have a proposal that requires significant capital. $5 million, correct?" "Correct," Marcus said, launching into his rehearsed speech. "But $5 million is just the seed. We are talking about a paradigm shift in urban living, ultra-luxury, concierge service, heated driveways. This is not just housing, Ms. S. This is a lifestyle. I have the vision. I have the connections. I just need a partner with the liquidity to match my ambition." Sophia turned her chair slowly to face him. She was wearing the oversized sunglasses Nana had given her. Her hair was sharp and angular. Her lips were painted a dark blood red. She looked nothing like the frantic, disheveled sister in the oversized sweater who cleaned up his messes. But even if she had looked the same, Marcus would not have recognized her. Because in his world, Sophia did not exist as a person. She was a function, a utility. He never looked her in the eye because he never believed she had a soul worth seeing. To him, the woman in front of him was a checkbook, not a sibling. She picked up his folder, flipping through the pages with a dismissive snap of her fingers. "I see a lot of pictures, Mr. Brooks," Sophia said, her voice cutting through his enthusiasm like a scalpel. "I see stock photos of marble bathrooms and rooftop bars. What I do not see are permits, zoning approvals, contractor bids, or a single dollar of your own equity in this deal." Marcus waved his hand, a nervous tic he had when challenged. "Details. Those are just administrative hurdles. My legal team is handling the zoning. As for equity, my contribution is the intellectual property, the brand. The Vanderbilt name opens doors that money cannot buy." "The Vanderbilt name," Sophia repeated, allowing a hint of amusement to color her tone. "Interesting. I was under the impression that you married into that name, and that your own personal credit history is currently, shall we say, under review?" Marcus froze. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. How did she know that? "A minor banking error," he lied quickly, smoothing his tie. "My accountants are sorting it out as we speak. It has no bearing on this project. This is a standalone venture." Sophia leaned forward, resting her elbows on the cold stone table. She lowered her sunglasses just an inch, looking at him over the rim. He looked back, But there was no spark of recognition, just the desperate, hungry gaze of a man who needed a lifeline. "Here is the reality, Mr. Brooks," Sophia said. "RW Capital does not invest in dreams. We invest in collateral. You are asking for $5 million. That is a high-risk loan for a first-time developer with no assets and frozen personal accounts." She paused, letting the silence stretch until Marcus began to sweat. "However," she continued, watching him squirm, "I like high risk. It usually comes with high reward. I am willing to fund your project, the full $5 million. Marcus nearly jumped out of his chair. His face lit up with greed. "You are? That is amazing. You won't regret this, I promise you. The returns will be astronomical." "Sit down," Sophia commanded. "I have not finished. I will wire the money to your business account by noon, but I require security. Since you have no cash and no land, I need a physical asset that covers the value of the loan." "Anything," Marcus said, desperate to close the deal before she changed her mind. "Name it." Sophia opened a file on the table. She slid a single piece of paper toward him. It was a pre-filled mortgage agreement. "I need a property," she said calmly. "A property with significant equity. A property free and clear of other debts. I understand your mother owns a rather large estate in Highland Park? 342 Oakwood Drive?" Marcus blinked. "My mom's house?" "It is the only asset you have access to that is worth enough to secure this loan," Sophia lied smoothly, knowing full well the house belonged to Nana. "But Bernice believes she owns it, and as her power of attorney, which I assume you can get her to sign, you can pledge it as collateral." Marcus hesitated. He thought about his mother. He thought about the fact that she would kill him if she knew he was risking the roof over her head. But then he thought about the $5 million. He thought about the Ferrari. He thought about proving Courtney wrong. He looked at the contract. He looked at the woman he did not recognize, the woman handing him the rope to hang himself. "It is just a formality, right?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking slightly. "I mean, once the condos sell, I pay back the loan and the lien on the house is removed?" "Exactly," Sophia said, a shark smiling at a seal. "If you succeed, the house is safe. You only lose it if you fail. And you are a visionary, Mr. Brooks. You do not plan on failing, do you?" Marcus picked up the pen. "No," he whispered. "I never fail." He signed his name. He signed his mother's name. He signed away the only sanctuary they had left. Sophia took the paper back. She checked the signature. It was done. "Pleasure doing business with you," she said, standing up to dismiss him. "The money will be in your account in an hour. Do not spend it all in one place." Marcus walked out of the room on air, believing he had just pulled off the deal of the century. He did not see Sophia walk to the window and watch him leave. He did not hear her whisper the words that would seal his fate. "Checkmate, little brother. Now go tell Mom you just sold her house." The atmosphere in the living room on Oakwood Drive was heavy with the scent of stale perfume and desperation. Marcus had slapped the mortgage contract onto the glass coffee table with the force of a man who believed he had just won the lottery. But Bernice was looking at the document as if it were a death warrant. For the first time in her life, my mother looked her age. The stress of the frozen bank accounts and the public humiliation at Hermes had cracked her perfectly foundationed mask. She sat on the velvet sofa, her hands trembling as she held the pen, staring at the line that required her signature. "Are you sure about this, Marcus?" she asked, her voice wavering. "This house is everything. It is the only asset we have left that the bank hasn't touched. If something goes wrong, if this project of yours fails, we will be on the street. I cannot be homeless, Marcus. I am a Vanderbilt by marriage. I have a reputation. Marcus paced the room, his energy manic and unstable. Mom, stop thinking like a poor person. That is why we are in this mess. You are afraid of risk. This isn't a gamble. It is a guarantee. Ms. S., the investor, she loves the project. She gave me the money on the spot. $5 million is sitting in escrow right now. All you have to do is sign that paper to release it. Do you want to go back to Hermes and laugh in that manager's face? Or do you want to clip coupons like Grandma? Bernice flinched at the mention of her mother. She looked at the contract again. The letters seemed to blur. But, she whispered, a lien on the house. It feels so permanent. This was the moment Courtney made her move. My sister-in-law had been sitting quietly in the armchair, scrolling through her phone, watching the scene unfold with the cold detachment of a predator watching wounded prey. She saw Bernice wavering. She saw the potential $5 million slipping away. She stood up, smoothing her skirt, and walked over to the sofa. She sat next to Bernice, wrapping a slender arm around my mother's shoulders. Her voice was like warm honey, thick and sweet, masking the poison underneath. Bernice, darling, look at me, Courtney said softly, tilting my mother's chin up. I know it is scary, but you are looking at this all wrong. You are not risking the house. You are investing in your legacy. She gestured to Marcus, who was sweating through his suit. Look at your son. He has your brilliance. He has your drive. He is not going to fail. He is going to build the most magnificent tower Chicago has ever seen. And when he does, he won't just pay off this tiny little mortgage. He is going to buy you a mansion in the Hamptons. He is going to buy you a villa in Tuscany. 10 houses, Bernice. He will buy you 10 houses to replace this one old thing. Courtney squeezed Bernice's shoulder gently. Do you really want to be the reason he fails? Do you want to be the mother who clipped her son's wings right before he learned to fly? Imagine what my parents will say if they hear you held him back. Imagine the gossip at the country club. The mention of the country club was the dagger. Courtney knew exactly where to strike. Bernice straightened her spine. Her vanity was stronger than her fear. She looked at Marcus, her eyes filling with a delusional pride. You are right, Bernice said, her voice strengthening. I raised a genius. Why should I doubt him? Exactly, Courtney whispered. Sign it, Mom. For us. For the family. Bernice took a deep breath. She pressed the pen to the paper. The scratching sound of the ink was loud in the silent room. She signed her name with a flourish. Bernice Brooks. There, she said, dropping the pen. It is done. Marcus let out a whoop of joy, grabbing the paper and kissing it. You won't regret this, Mom. I am going to the bank right now to finalize the wire transfer. We are rich again! He ran out of the room, already dialing his contractor. Bernice sank back into the sofa, looking exhausted but hopeful. Courtney stood up, her smile vanishing the moment Bernice looked away. I am going to call my parents, Courtney said. I need to tell them the good news so they can book a table for celebration tonight. She walked out of the living room, through the kitchen, and out onto the back patio. She closed the sliding glass door, ensuring it was sealed tight. She walked to the edge of the garden, where the winter wind whipped around her, and pulled out her phone. She dialed a number saved as Dad. I watched all of this from 3 miles away. In the penthouse of the Rosewood Tower, the audio feed was crystal clear. Nana Rose had not just installed cameras in the house years ago for security. She had bugged every room, knowing that one day she might need to know what her enemies were plotting. I sat at the desk, wearing noise-canceling headphones, my heart pounding as I listened to Courtney's voice change. The sweetness was gone. The supportive wife act was dropped. Her voice was now sharp, cruel, and dripping with contempt. "Daddy? It is me," Courtney said into her phone. "Yeah, the idiot signed it. I cannot believe it actually worked." I leaned forward, turning up the volume. "I know," Courtney laughed, lighting a cigarette she had hidden in her pocket. "It was pathetic. I had to stroke her ego for 5 minutes, talking about legacies and villas in Italy. She ate it up. These people are so desperate to be seen as important. They will sign their own death warrants if you compliment their jewelry." My blood ran cold. These people. The way she said it carried the weight of generations of prejudice. "So, here's the plan," Courtney continued, pacing on the patio. "The money hits Marcus's business account tomorrow morning. As his business partner and wife, I have signatory rights. As soon as the funds clear, I am transferring $3 million to the Cayman account we set up. I will leave him $2 million to dig a hole in the ground so it looks like a legitimate business failure." She took a long drag of the cigarette. "No, Daddy, I am not staying for the fallout." "Are you kidding me? I have spent 3 years living in this tacky house, pretending to like their fried food and listening to Bernice brag about money she does not have. I am done. As soon as the transfer is confirmed, I am filing for divorce. I will claim irreconcilable differences and emotional distress. By the time they realize the house is foreclosed and the money is gone, I will be sipping mojitos with you in Turks and Caicos." She laughed again, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Marcus actually thinks he is a developer. It is hilarious. He cannot even do long division without a calculator. But he was useful. He got me the signature. Okay, I have to go back inside and pretend to celebrate with the animals. Love you. Bye." She hung up and stomped the cigarette out on the pavement, checking her reflection in the glass door to compose her fake smile before re-entering the house. I took the headphones off slowly. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, focused fury. I looked at Nana Rose, who was sitting across from me. She had heard everything through the speakers. Her face was a mask of stone, but her eyes were burning. "She is not just greedy," Nana said softly. "She is a predator. She came into our house, ate our food, and planned to burn us down from the inside because she thinks we are beneath her." I stood up, walking to the window. I looked down at the city, thinking about Marcus running to the bank, thinking about Bernice dreaming of Italy. They were terrible people, yes. They had treated me like dirt. But they were my blood. And this woman, this outsider who smiled in their faces while calling them animals, was planning to destroy them for sport. "She wants to steal the investment money," I said, my voice steady. "She wants to run with $3 million. Nana nodded. "That is theft. That is fraud. And since the money she is stealing belongs to RW Capital, she is stealing from us." I turned back to the desk, looking at the dossier we had on Courtney. "Let the transfer go through," I said. "Let her think she has won. We need the paper trail. We need proof that she moved the funds. Once that money hits the Cayman account, it is a federal crime." I picked up the phone and dialed our head of legal. "Prepare the foreclosure notice for the house," I told the lawyer. It was the voice of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. I typed a command into the terminal. Immediately, the trap snapped shut. By signing the loan agreement, Marcus and Bernice had agreed to Clause 42, Section C. It was a standard clause in high-risk lending, often called the distress trigger. It gave the lender, RW Capital, the right to audit and seize personal assets if there was any suspicion of financial mismanagement that could endanger the loan repayment. And thanks to Courtney's immediate transfer of funds to the Cayman Islands minutes earlier, we had all the suspicion we needed. The first casualty was the car. Bernice was preparing to drive to the club for a celebratory lunch. She had put on her best Chanel suit and was walking down the driveway toward her beloved Mercedes S-Class. It was her pride and joy, a rolling symbol of her status that she washed more often than she ever washed her own dishes. But as she approached the car, she stopped. Bernice grabbed the phone, bringing it inches from her eyes. She stared at the image for a long time. Then she gasped, dropping the phone onto the sofa cushions. "That is impossible," she whispered. She is at a motel. Or a shelter. She barely has 2 nickels to rub together. Where did she get a mink coat? Why is she at the Rosewood Tower? "Because she is Rosewood!" Marcus shouted, pacing the room frantically. "The loan, the company, RW Capital. It is all her. She lied to me?" Bernice's voice rose to a shriek. "She watched me struggle? She watched me stress about mortgage payments and country club dues. She let me drive an S-Class when I could have been being driven in a Rolls Royce? That selfish, spiteful old witch. She has been mocking us," Marcus added, fueling the fire. "She set us up, Mom. She gave me the loan just so she could take it away. I am just here for my jewelry," Courtney said coldly, not bothering to make eye contact. "Do not think this means I am staying. My lawyer is drafting the divorce papers as we speak." "You might want to hold off on that, Courtney," Marcus said, a twisted smile forming on his face. "Unless you want to walk away from a share of $3 billion. Courtney stopped. She turned around slowly, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" They told her everything. They showed her the photos. They explained the RW Capital connection. As Courtney listened, the greed that defined her entire existence began to override her contempt for her husband. She dropped the duffel bag. Her mind, sharp and predatory, began to spin. "So, let me get this straight." Courtney paced the room, tapping a manicured nail against her teeth. The gears in her head were turning. She looked at the photo of Nana Rose again. Then she looked at Bernice and Marcus. She saw 2 incompetent fools who would never be able to outsmart a woman like Nana Rose. But Courtney? Courtney knew how to play dirty. She stopped pacing and looked at them with a chilling calmness. "Stop screaming, both of you. Getting angry won't get the money back. We need a strategy." "What strategy?" Bernice sobbed. "She has the lawyers. She has the money. We have nothing." "We have the one thing she cannot buy," Courtney said softly. "That does not sound like a powerful CEO to me. That sounds like a woman suffering from severe dementia. That sounds like a woman who has lost her grip on reality and is being manipulated by someone. Maybe a greedy granddaughter?" Bernice blinked. "You mean Sophia?" "Exactly," Courtney nodded. "Sophia is the one pulling the strings. She kidnapped your mother. She is using your mother's confused mental state to access this hidden fortune. She is the one attacking you. Nana Rose does not know what she is doing. She is sick. She is vulnerable." Courtney leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We do not need to sue. We show them the medical records of her heart condition. We testify that she has been acting erratically, that she disappeared into a blizzard. We paint Sophia as the abuser who abducted her. If the judge agrees, he will grant you, her only daughter, full legal control over her person and her estate. Bernice's eyes widened. She began to understand. We are doing this. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were alert. They moved faster than I anticipated. Courtney must have called in every favor her father has with the district attorney. Before Dr. Alcott notes that her mind is as sharp as a tack. She is not senile. She is not confused. She is simply a wealthy woman who was evicted by her ungrateful daughter. The judge flipped through the medical report, his eyebrows rising with every page. He looked at the video, still frozen on the screen. Then he looked at Bernice. The sympathy in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, hard fury. Mrs. Vanderbilt, the judge said, his voice booming, you have come into my courtroom and perjured yourself. You have wasted the court's time, and you have attempted to weaponize the legal system to strip a competent woman of her civil rights. But, Your Honor, Bernice stammered, standing up, the video, it is out of context. I was stressed. Sit down, the judge barked. He slammed his gavel. The petition for conservatorship is denied, with prejudice. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office to review the footage for potential charges of elder abuse and filing a false police report. Regarding the defendant, Sophia Rosewood, all charges of kidnapping are immediately dismissed and expunged. She was acting in accordance with her grandmother's wishes to escape a hostile environment. The gavel banged again, sounding like the final nail in Bernice's coffin. Case dismissed. Bernice collapsed into her chair, sobbing for real this time. Courtney was already moving toward the exit, trying to distance herself from the disaster. But the bailiff blocked her path. I stood up. I felt lighter than I had in years. I looked at Julian Sterling, and he gave me a small professional nod. We walked out of the courtroom together. In the hallway, Bernice and Courtney were arguing loudly. Bernice was blaming Courtney for the plan. Courtney was calling Bernice a bad liar. When they saw me, they stopped. Bernice wiped her face, straightening her jacket, trying to regain some shred of dignity. This isn't over, Sophia, Bernice hissed. You might have won today, but I am still her daughter. I still live in that house. You cannot keep me away from my inheritance forever. I stopped walking. I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer. I pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope stamped with the RW Capital seal. I walked up to Bernice. She flinched as if I were going to hit her. Instead, I gently pressed the envelope into her hand. You are right, Bernice, I said, my voice calm and steady. It isn't over. It is just beginning. What is this? Bernice asked, looking down at the envelope. I leaned in close so only she could hear me. You signed a mortgage agreement with Ms. S., remember? You put the house up as collateral for Marcus's loan. Bernice's eyes went wide. No, we have time. We have 30 days to make the first payment. Actually, I said, smiling, you violated the terms of the loan when Courtney tried to wire $3 million to the Cayman Islands. That is called fraud, Bernice. And per the contract, fraud triggers an immediate default clause. I tapped the envelope. That is a formal notice of foreclosure. The bank is calling the loan. Since you do not have $5 million, the bank is taking the house. I checked my watch. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. If you are not out by noon tomorrow, the sheriff will remove you. And Bernice? I turned to walk away, pausing just long enough to deliver the final blow. Make sure you take your trash with you. We do not want it smelling up the property. The countdown began the moment I handed Bernice that envelope outside the courthouse. Time is usually an abstract concept, but for the residents of 342 Oakwood Drive, it became a physical weight crushing them with every passing second. They had 24 hours to find $5 million or lose the roof over their heads. Bernice and Marcus spent the first 6 hours in a state of manic denial, believing that their status as Vanderbilts would open doors that were slammed shut. They were wrong. They drove to the First National Bank where Bernice had banked for 30 years. She demanded to see the branch manager, a man she had invited to Christmas parties. He refused to come out of his office, instead sending a junior teller to inform them that due to the active foreclosure proceedings and the freezing of assets by federal authorities, no new lines of credit could be extended. They went to a predatory lender in a strip mall, the kind of place that charged 300% interest. Even there, the loan officer laughed in their faces once he ran their social security numbers. My grandmother had done her work thoroughly. The financial blockade around them was absolute. They were not just broke, they were radioactive. By 6 p.m, the reality set in. They returned to the house that was no longer theirs. The heating had been cut off due to non-payment, and the mansion was beginning to feel like a tomb. Boxes were scattered everywhere, but they weren't packed with care. They were torn open in a frantic search for anything of value that could be sold. Courtney was in the master bedroom, but she was not helping Bernice pack the china. She was methodically filling her Louis Vuitton trunks with every piece of jewelry, every designer handbag, and every fur coat she could find. She was looting the shipwreck before jumping overboard. Marcus walked into the room, his tie loosened and his eyes red from crying. He saw his wife stripping the hangers from the closet. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling. "We need to help Mom figure out where we are going to sleep tomorrow. Why are you packing your winter coats? It is July." Courtney didn't even turn around. She snapped a diamond bracelet onto her wrist and threw a silk scarf into the open trunk. "I am not going where you are going, Marcus. My father sent a car. It will be here in 10 minutes. I am going back to the city." Marcus froze. "You are leaving me? Now? In the middle of this?" Courtney finally turned. Her face was stripped of the fake sweetness she had worn for 3 years. It was hard and cold. "I married a developer, Marcus. I married a man with a future. I did not marry a man who gets outsmarted by his grandmother and loses his mother's house in a Ponzi scheme. You are a loser. And worse than that, you are poor." She zipped up the bag, the sound loud and final in the empty room. "I stood by you when I thought you were going to inherit billions. But now, you are nothing. You are a 40-year-old man with no job, no home, and a mother who is going to be a millstone around your neck for the rest of your life. I am cutting my losses." She grabbed the handle of her suitcase and tried to push past him. Marcus, panic rising in his chest, grabbed her arm. "You cannot do this, Courtney. You signed the papers too. You were the one who told Mom to do it. You are my wife." Courtney looked at his hand on her arm with disgust. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply reacted with the same physical disdain Marcus had shown Nana Rose. She shoved him. It wasn't a playful push. It was a violent thrust of her palms against his chest, putting all her weight behind it. Marcus, caught off guard, stumbled backward. His foot caught on the edge of the rug and he fell, hard. He landed on his back, his head cracking against the hardwood floor. He lay there for a moment, stunned, looking up at the ceiling. The position was eerily familiar. It was the exact spot where Nana's wheelchair had been parked when he kicked it. It was the exact angle of helplessness Nana must have felt when he loomed over her.
The universe was not just punishing him, it was mocking him.
Courtney stood over him, looking down, not with concern, but with pity. Pathetic, she spat. She walked out of the room, dragging her suitcase behind her. Marcus listened to the click-clack of her heels on the stairs. He heard the front door open. He heard a car engine idle outside. And then he heard the silence return. Downstairs, Bernice was sitting in the dark kitchen. She had heard the fight. She had heard Courtney leave, but she did not move. She was holding her phone, staring at a number she had dialed 1,000 times in the past to demand favors. She pressed call. In the penthouse, I was sitting by the window watching the city lights. My phone buzzed. I saw the name, Bernice. I picked up. I didn't say anything. I just breathed into the receiver, waiting. Sophia? Bernice's voice was raspy. She sounded like she had aged 20 years in one day. I am here, Bernice, I said quietly.
You need to stop this.
Her voice suddenly hardened, shifting from despair to anger. This has gone far enough. We learned our lesson. Courtney left Marcus. We are alone. We are scared. Are you happy now? I am not happy, Bernice, I replied. This isn't about happiness. It is about consequences. You listen to me, Sophia, Bernice snapped, her old arrogance flaring up like a dying ember. You cannot actually kick us out. I am your mother. I gave you life. I put a roof over your head for 32 years. You owe me. I owe you nothing, I said coldly. Nana paid for that roof. I paid for the groceries. You just took the credit. I am not leaving, Bernice screamed into the phone, her voice echoing in the empty house. I am not going anywhere. This is my house. You won't send the sheriff because you are weak. You are a servant, Sophia. You have always been a servant. You do not have the guts to throw your own mother onto the street. I listened to her threats. I listened to her try to bully me one last time, thinking that biology was a shield that would protect her from the law. She still didn't get it. She still thought I was the girl who was afraid of her. No, Bernice, I said, my voice steady and calm. I won't throw you onto the street. The deputies will do that. You wouldn't dare, Bernice hissed. People will talk. The neighbors will see. You will be the daughter who evicted her mother. You will be a pariah. I would rather be a pariah than a victim, I said. I hung up the phone. I looked at Nana Rose, who was sitting in her wheelchair by the fire sipping tea. She looked at me, raising an eyebrow. Is she packing? Nana asked. No, I said, placing the phone on the table. She is threatening me. She thinks I am bluffing. Nana sighed, shaking her head. Then she is going to have a very rude awakening at noon tomorrow. I looked at the clock on the wall. 12 hours left. The final night at Oakwood Drive had begun. And for the first time in my life, I slept soundly, knowing that justice was not just coming, it was already here. The sun hung high over Oakwood Drive, casting long, sharp shadows across the manicured lawns of the neighborhood. It was exactly 12 o'clock. The deadline had arrived. The silence that had enveloped number 342 for the last 24 hours was suddenly shattered not by a scream, but by the low mechanical rumble of heavy machinery. The neighbors who had spent years envying Bernice's parties and judging her scandals were now lining the sidewalks, their phones raised, recording the downfall of the dynasty. They sensed blood in the water. I arrived in the lead vehicle of a motorcade that looked more like a presidential visit than an eviction. The black SUV stopped right at the curb. Michael opened the door and I stepped out. I was no longer wearing the oversized hand-me-downs Bernice used to throw at me. I was wearing a white, bespoke suit that shone like armor in the sunlight. Behind me, Nana Rose was lowered in her wheelchair, looking like a queen returning to conquer a rebellious province. We did not look at the neighbors. We looked at the house. It stood there, a monument to vanity. The colonial pillars, the oversized windows, the 3-car garage that was now empty. It was a beautiful shell rotter from the inside out by the people who lived in it. Bernice burst out of the front door. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair unwashed, her face a mask of panic and rage. Marcus stumbled out behind her, looking like a ghost. "You cannot do this!" Bernice screamed, rushing down the driveway barefoot. "Get away from my house! I called the police! They are coming to arrest you for trespassing!" I stood my ground, my hands clasped calmly in front of me. I waited until she was close enough to see the pity in my eyes.
"The police are already here, Bernice," I said, gesturing to the 2 squad cars parked quietly at the end of the block. "They are here to ensure the peace while the rightful owner reclaims the property, and that owner is not you." Bernice stopped panting. She looked at the heavy yellow bulldozer parked on the street, its engine idling with a menacing growl. She looked at the men in hard hats standing by the truck, holding blueprints. "What is that?" she whispered, pointing at the machine. "Why is there a bulldozer?" "Because we are not just taking the house back," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the crisp air. "We are erasing it." The crowd of neighbors murmured. Phones flashed. Bernice looked around, realizing she was the center of a public spectacle. Her narcissism flared up one last time, desperately trying to rewrite the narrative. "This is my daughter," she yelled, turning to the neighbors, spreading her arms wide. "Look at what she is doing to her own mother. She stole my money. She is abusive. She is mentally unstable." I stepped forward, cutting off her performance. "I am not just your daughter, Bernice. My name is Sophia Rosewood, and I am the CEO of Rosewood Capital, the company you defrauded. You signed a contract. You violated the terms. You lost the asset. This isn't a family dispute. It is a business transaction, and you are bad for business." The weight of my title hung in the air. The neighbors began to whisper. Rosewood Capital? The Billionaire holding company? The realization rippled through the crowd. The servant girl was the boss. Suddenly, a yellow taxi screeched to a halt behind the bulldozer. The door flew open and Courtney jumped out. She must have seen the news. She must have seen the live stream from the news helicopter circling overhead. She saw the SUV. She saw the expensive suit. But most importantly, she saw the power. Courtney ran past the police, her heels clicking on the asphalt. She ignored Marcus, who was sitting on the curb with his head in his hands. She ran straight toward me, a wide, breathless smile plastered on her face. "Sophia!" she cried out, opening her arms as if we were long-lost friends. "Oh, thank God I saw the news! I was so worried about you." She tried to step into my personal space, but Michael moved faster than lightning. He stepped between us, his massive frame blocking her path like a wall. Courtney slammed into his chest and stumbled back. "Whoa, easy, big guy," Courtney laughed nervously, trying to peer around him. "Sophia, tell your guard to back off. It is me. It is Courtney. We are sisters, remember?" I signaled Michael to step aside.
I looked at Courtney. She was wearing the jewelry she had stolen from the house. She was clutching a designer bag filled with looted assets. Sisters? I repeated, my voice flat. That is funny. Yesterday you called me a servant. You told my brother to put our grandmother in the garage. You pushed your husband down the stairs because he lost his money. Courtney's smile faltered, but she didn't give up. She was a survivor, a parasite looking for a new host. I was stressed, Sophia. You know how Bernice gets. She manipulated me. I was always on your side. I knew you were special. Look, I left Marcus. I am free. We can be a team. You need someone who knows how to navigate high society. I can be your VP of marketing. I can help you spend all that money. She reached out to touch my arm, her eyes hungry for a piece of the empire she had mocked. I looked at her hand, then I looked at her face. You are not my sister, I said coldly. You are not my friend. You are a stranger who broke into my family and tried to sell it for parts. I turned to the head of security. Escort this woman off the property. If she returns, charge her with trespassing. And notify the district attorney that we have located the suspect in the wire fraud case. She is holding the stolen jewelry in her bag right now. Courtney's face went pale. What? No! You cannot do that! 2 officers moved in, grabbing Courtney by the elbows. She began to scream, kicking and cursing, showing her true colors as they dragged her toward the police cruiser. Her screams of, "I am a victim!" faded as the car door slammed shut. I turned back to the house. Bernice and Marcus were standing on the lawn, shivering. They had nothing. No car, no money, no allies. It is time, Nana Rose said from her wheelchair. She was looking at the house, not with nostalgia, but with the resolve of someone closing a painful chapter. I looked at the foreman of the demolition crew. I nodded once. Tear it down. The foreman blew a whistle. The diesel engine of the bulldozer roared to life, belching black smoke into the sky. The ground shook as the massive machine rolled forward, its metal tracks crushing the pristine flower beds Bernice loved so much. No! Bernice shrieked, running forward. Stop! My china is in there. My dresses. My life! Marcus grabbed her, holding her back. Mom, stop! It is over! The bulldozer reached the front porch. The operator raised the massive steel bucket. For a second, it hung in the air like an executioner's axe. Then, with a terrible grinding crash, it came down. The sound was deafening. Wood splintered like matchsticks. The beautiful oak front door, the one Bernice had locked us out of, was smashed into oblivion. Glass shattered, raining down like diamonds. The roof of the porch collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris. Bernice fell to her knees in the grass. She let out a wail that was not human. It was the sound of a soul breaking. She watched as the bucket swung again, taking out the wall of the dining room. The chandelier, the one she valued more than Nana's life, swung wildly for a moment before crashing down into the rubble. I watched the destruction without blinking. I saw my old bedroom, the small, cramped space where I had cried myself to sleep, disappear in a pile of drywall. I saw the kitchen where I had cooked their meals crumble. I saw the living room where they had laughed at me turn to dust. It wasn't just a house. It was a prison. And with every swing of the bulldozer, the bars were breaking. Nana reached out and took my hand. Her grip was warm. Look at it, Sophia, she whispered over the roar of the engine. It is just wood and stone. It never made them happy. and it never defined us. We watched for an hour until the mansion on Oakwood Drive was nothing but a pile of twisted metal and broken dreams. The dust settled on Bernice's hair, turning it gray. She sat in the dirt, staring at the ruin of her vanity, unable to look away. I turned to Michael. "Give them the address of the shelter downtown," I said, "and give them bus fare. We are done here." I helped Nana back into the SUV. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the rubble. I looked forward at the skyline of Chicago, where the Rosewood Tower stood tall and gleaming. My name was on that building. My blood was in its foundation. And for the first time in 32 years, I was finally going home. It has been exactly 365 days since the bulldozer crushed the front porch of the house on Oakwood Drive. The pile of rubble that was once a monument to my mother's vanity has been cleared away. The ground has been healed. Where a fortress of exclusion once stood, there is now a building made of warm cedar and floor-to-ceiling glass designed to let the light in rather than keep people out. We call it the Rosewood Sanctuary. It is a state-of-the-art residence for elderly people who have been abandoned by their families or who have no place left to go. It has heated floors. It has a gourmet kitchen. And most importantly, it has a rule carved into the stone archway of the entrance. No one is ever a burden here. I stood on the podium cutting the red ribbon while flashbulbs popped around me. I looked into the crowd. I saw the faces of the residents, men and women who had been discarded like Nana, was finding dignity again. I saw Nana Rose sitting in the front row. She wasn't hiding in a coat anymore. She was wearing a bright yellow suit, smiling at me with pride. She had stepped down as CEO last month, handing the entire Rosewood empire over to me. She said she was too busy planning the garden for the sanctuary to worry about board meetings. But not everyone was celebrating today. 5 miles away in the grimy kitchen of a 24-hour burger joint downtown, the air smelled of stale grease and despair. Bernice Vanderbilt was scraping burnt cheese off a grill. Her Chanel suits were long gone, sold to a consignment shop to pay for the security deposit on a basement studio apartment she now shared with Marcus. Her manicure was a distant memory, her hands red and blistered from the hot oil. "Order up!" a manager shouted. He was a 19-year-old boy with a bad attitude, the kind of person Bernice used to snap her fingers at. Now he was her boss. Bernice wiped her hands on her stained apron and grabbed the tray. She walked to the counter, her feet aching in cheap sneakers. She looked up at the television mounted in the corner of the dining room. It was tuned to the local news. On the screen, she saw me. She saw the helicopter shots of the new sanctuary. She saw the headlines scrolling across the bottom. "Sophia Rosewood, Chicago's newest billionaire philanthropist." Bernice froze, staring at the image of the daughter she had thrown away. The daughter who was now sitting on a throne of gold while she scrubbed floors for minimum wage. "Hey, lady, where is my fries?" a customer yelled, banging on the counter. Bernice flinched. She looked at the customer. It was a woman in a nice coat holding a designer bag. For a split second, Bernice saw her old self, and it made her sick. "Coming right up." Bernice whispered, her voice hollow. In the back of the kitchen, Marcus was mopping the floor. He looked older. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by a permanent slouch of defeat. He paused, leaning on the mop handle to look at the TV. He saw the Rosewood Tower piercing the skyline in the background of the news report. It stood tall and unshakable, a constant reminder of the birthright he had signed away for a promise of easy money. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stared at the tower, knowing that he would spend the rest of his life looking up at it from the gutter. They had not just lost their money, they had lost the privilege of being oblivious. Every day was a lesson in the humility they had refused to learn when they were rich. High above the city, far away from the smell of grease and regret, the blades of the Rosewood helicopter cut through the twilight air. We were hovering over the lake, watching the sunset behind the skyline, turning the water into liquid gold. I sat across from Nana, holding a glass of vintage champagne. This time, we were not fleeing a blizzard. We were taking a victory lap. "You did good, kid," Nana said, looking out at the city she had conquered twice, once in the shadows and once in the light. "You turned a site of trauma into a site of healing. Your grandfather would be proud." I looked at her. "I am proud of us, Nana. We didn't just survive. We evolved." I looked down at the city grid. Somewhere down there in the maze of streets, Bernice and Marcus were finishing their shifts, walking home to a cold apartment. A part of me, the old Sophia, felt a twinge of pity, but the new Sophia, the CEO, remembered the cold wind on Christmas Eve. I remembered the sound of the lock clicking shut. I turned to the camera, addressing the millions of people who had followed our journey. They say that blood is thicker than water. They say that you have to forgive family no matter what, because they are all you have. But I am here to tell you that is a lie. Family is not a license to abuse. It is not a shield for cruelty. I took a sip of champagne, feeling the bubbles dance on my tongue. Sometimes you have to look at the people you love and realize they are the ones holding the knife. And sometimes, to save the body, you have to cut off the necrotic tissue. I did not lose my family when I walked away from that house. I saved myself. I filtered out the parasites so I could finally breathe. I looked at Nana, who raised her glass in a toast. So if you are out there, standing in the cold, wondering if you are strong enough to walk away, listen to me. You are. The helicopter is waiting. All you have to do is get on board. I smiled as the pilot banked the aircraft toward the Rosewood Tower, taking us home. This is Sophia Rosewood signing off. And remember, the best revenge is not destroying your enemies. It is living a life so beautiful they cannot stand to watch it. The most painful truth I learned is that shared DNA does not guarantee loyalty. For years, I mistook enduring abuse for family duty, believing my worth depended on their validation. But standing in the snow that Christmas Eve, I finally realized that true family isn't about who you are born to. It is about who stands by you when the world turns cold. You cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. Real power comes from having the courage to cut off the dead weight to save yourself. If this story inspired you to choose your own peace over toxic expectations, please hit the like button and subscribe. Have you ever had to walk away from a family member to survive? I want to hear your story in the comments below.